The Miami Dolphins rushing attack got on track against the Patriots in Week 5. What changed in this matchup against the Patriots? And more importantly, what of it is sustainable moving forward the rest of the season?
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft Lead for the 33rd team. I want to thank you guys for tapping in because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. So a special shout out to our everydayers. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase on last-minute tickets with the lowest prices. I want to take a moment here on the top of the show to extend all of our thoughts to the West Coast in Florida. Obviously, a very, very nasty storm headed your way here in the next day or so. Our thoughts here on the show are with all of you guys. Hope you guys stay safe. Take care. If you have people down there, please check in on them. Make sure that they have a plan and are putting themselves in position to get out of the way of this monster hurricane that is coming up through the Gulf. So best wishes to everybody on the West Coast of Florida here from Locked On Dolphins to each and every one of you. The Dolphins on Sunday ran the ball for almost 200 yards. This was the second time in the Mike McDaniel era that the team ran the ball 40-plus times in a football game. The other occasion, which Mike McDaniel alluded to during his press conference yesterday, was against Denver when they put 70 points on the board. And one of the worst things that's ever happened to the Dolphins team, because he scored 70 points in December and everybody decided we were amazing. And it totally put these expectations on this football team that they clearly were not ready for because they haven't matched it since. And that's not to say you should go out and match 70 points again, but geez Louise. Now we're happy we score 15 because it's more than 10. And that's what the Dolphins did. They scored 15 points against the New England Patriots in Foxborough to win and move to 2-3 on the season. With the bye week coming up, it's a chance to kind of zoom out, look at everything from a big picture perspective based off of the sample size that we have at our disposal right now. They have 12 more games they're going to play. I said that on Joe Rowe's show this morning. You are going to play the next 12 games no matter what. So let's let the 12 games play out and then look at the body of work and make decisions based on what we think is in the best interest of the Miami Dolphins organization at that point, from top down. We'll look at the whole thing. But as of right now, this is an offense that is still scrapping to score points. They're 32nd in the league in scoring offense through 5 weeks. That is not what Mike McDaniel's here to do. And this football team looked like they found a little bit of self-awareness with the way that they played against New England. I have finished the offensive grading for the game. And what stood out to me, when you look at the way the game was played, where they won their matchups, the best thing the Patriots team had going for them coming into this game was their front, was their defensive front. So that's why I do put some stock. I do acknowledge that from a quality win perspective, the Patriots are not a good football team. And you beat a not good football team by 5 points. Okay. Multiple things can be true at once. I'm going to get t-shirts and just put that on. Because everybody takes a declarative statement and thinks that means that disqualifies every other variable, when in reality, there's 1,000 variables that are wrapped into every element of this football team. And every football team, not just the Dolphins. But the fact that you had strong performances from Alec Ingold and Jonnu Smith, and I actually graded Julian Hell pretty well as well. I know he had the holding penalty. He doesn't give you a lot in the passing game, but he had a lot of really impactful combo blocks and blocks on the first level of the line of scrimmage that helped create these creases for Raheem Mostert and Jaylen Wright to run to. So the first thing that when I look at what changed versus New England was your F position, your fullback and your tight ends, your flex players that are the adjusters of all of your formations. They played their best game of the season from top to bottom. Like the collective room played their best game of the season. Now, you may have had individual performers who had better performances in different games, but on the whole, this group, Mike McDaniel said that to me in training camp. That the versatility and execution of that room dictates the versatility of the entire offense. And for a team that needed to kind of change its identity, right? Because let's be honest, Mike McDaniel wants to throw the football. He may be a run game coordinator. That may be his background. Teams may be giving it to him, but he's got Tyreek Hill and he's got Jaylen Waddle. He wants to throw the football. I think at times to a fault. Well, to a fault, right? And I totally understand the thought process of getting your best players the football. But the pathway to winning games right now looks a heck of a whole lot more like what it did in week 5 versus what it did in week 3 against Seattle. So Alec Ingold had a monster day. Jonnu Smith had a couple of really nice opportunities. They found more ways to get him the ball. I would not run toss with Jonnu Smith, crack toss, which is what they try to do. They get a second and near midfield. And I believe there was no back on the field for that. So they kind of tried to give you an empty look and get personnel out there that was a light personnel, like a pass down, and then get the ball carrier being Jonnu Smith. So I get the thought process, but I thought Johnny did some really nice things as far as receiving in the middle of the field, and he had the misconnection with Tyler Huntley on the ball down the sideline where he's kind of drifting, and Tyler, it kind of looked like he expected him to keep spiking up the sideline. And that was the thing that when you went back and you watched the game as a whole stood out to me was, and I made this comment during the game and I caught some flack for it, for the Jaylen Waddle slant that he did not catch over the middle. If you go back and you watch the All-22, Jaylen Waddle runs this slant and he gears it down because it's a hole in zone coverage. He's feeling there's a squatter sitting in the middle of the field, so I'm going to gear this down and expect him to put it on me. Well, Tyler Huntley says, it's a slant. I'm going to throw it like you're running a slant. So Jaylen gears down and Tyler throws it as though he's going to keep running. And then it's still a catchable ball, but Jaylen kind of squares up and then has to kind of readjust and extend for it. And if he would have kept running, he probably gets run right into the Mike linebacker for a big hit. And that's where when you think about the precision, timing-oriented elements of the passing game that are being tested right now because it doesn't exist. If you try to run it that way with all this stuff into the teeth of the defense without the precision that makes it tick, you're putting your guys in a lot of precarious situations to take really big shots. And that's kind of what my worry is until we kind of see the passing game stabilize a little bit more, whether that's with Tua or they continue to kind of evolve what they're doing. Is you're running Tyreek on inbreakers and you're running Jaylen Waddle on slants, and now Odell's running slants. And are you running those into safety rotation where somebody drops down, or are they going to drop both the linebackers out? And now these guys are in position to take big hits because you're running them into contact. That's an observation that I had that I just would like to make the footnote on and be like, hey, I hope they get this cleaned up before somebody takes a really nasty hit over the middle of the field. But the F position is totally sustainable because Julian Hill has the physicality to block defensive ends the way that he blocked defensive ends and combo blocked on 300-pound defensive linemen with Austin Jackson the way that he did in this football game. Alec Ingold can absolutely smack linebackers and edge players and safeties the way that he smacked linebackers and edge players and safeties against New England. Jonnu Smith, I think he's scored well for me in 2 of the last 3 games. I think that's more of a utilization type thing and getting him the right opportunities to get out on the field and maybe scoring some of the smaller wide receiver types in certain down-by-down situations, especially if you're going to use your big backs, which is where we're going next. We're going to look at the running back position. That's next here on this episode of Locked on Dolphins. What changed against New England? What's sustainable? That's next. Stick with us. Football fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, the play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Dolphins are off this weekend, but there's still plenty of NFL action for you. Over on FanDuel, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How would you spend it wisely to improve yourself? How about history, economics, great works of literature? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and Introduction to Free Market Economics. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Right now, go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started at hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Boy, did these running backs run hard. And Jaylen Wright on 25 snaps very easily could have had a 100-yard day, if not for the 35-yard run being called back on what was, quite frankly, a soft holding call. Now, they called it, okay? They called it. So you do what you do. He had 13 carries for 86 yards. It is what it is. I want to talk about Jaylen Wright. I want to talk about Raheem Mostert, and then we have to talk about Devon. We have to have an honest conversation about Devon Achane. An honest conversation. So let's start with Raheem Mostert, the vet in the room. Played on a snap count, still got 40-something snaps in this football game. And it was a reminder of a couple of things. This offense is a skill player-driven offense. That is the choice that Mike McDaniel and the football operations have made and adopted as an extension of the Shanahan tree of offense. That is how they all operate. They care about the dynamic skill players and how that changes the spacing of the field. And all of that, all of the tools that provides a coaching staff and a play caller to push the right buttons and find the right matchups and create the kind of space that you need and problem solve defensive lines and pass rush and so on and so forth. And whether or not that's the right or wrong football ideology, that's a conversation for another day. And I'm not disputing or arguing with you if you feel differently. I'm just telling you what they think. And it's not a subjective thing. Like, it's been well established. That's what they think. Right? So this is a skill player-oriented offense. And in a skill player-oriented offense, specifically in the wide zone offense, you as an outside runner, your responsibilities are a little bit more intense in this offense than they are in many other offenses as a ball carrier to create yards. You, as you press the line of scrimmage, if I come out of the mesh point and I have the ball and I'm working to my landmark on my outside zone plays, even if I see that I know that that outside gap is not open, I have to keep pressing that way and not bail on the track that I'm on too early. Because everybody on the backside, everybody that's flowing with the front, they're all dependent on you getting to the landmark to allow them to pick up their angles so that then you can cut back against the grain. And I think as you've had the younger players running some of the outside zone stuff, and again, multiple things can be true. Up until this game, you really haven't had a good performance from the F position guys. That is a factual statement. But so too is, as the younger guys work the outside stuff, as they press that, I think they've probably gotten off the tracks a little too quick. Their eyes have moved too quick. They've started their cuts too quick. And now all of a sudden, that backside guard who's relying on the linebacker running over the top based on the way that the back is pressing to the play side, to help get the angle so that when the cutback happens, I'm in position to seal him off and you could cut back against me if you want to. He's not in position to do that because the linebacker says, oh, he's cut back. I'm going to run underneath the guard and make a play and squeeze the gap, as just one of the many examples of the way that happens. Raheem Mostert doesn't do that because Raheem Mostert has made his living, his bread is buttered in this system. He gets it. He understands it, and he does it at a very high level, and I thought you saw that in this football game, even when it didn't hit off the edge. And there were many times where it hit in the C gap. And that's a credit to the vision. That's a credit to the commitment. It's a credit to the backside guys to cut it off. It's a credit to the guys at the front to really create some movement and knock some guys around. I thought that was the best job that they have done, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Raheem Mostert was the catalyst for it happening. Then you have Jaylen Wright. And Jaylen Wright ran hard. And I think when you're a team that's trying to scrap out hard yards, when you're a team that's trying to scrap out long possessions, when you're a team that's having a fight to score and you're not getting explosives, and they left probably 3 explosive touchdowns out there on the field. And I think that's probably applicable in all 3 games. Seattle, I could think of 2 off the top of my head. Tennessee, I could think of 3 off the top of my head, and I could think of 3 off the top of my head against New England. Like explosive would-be touchdown scores in the passing game that they're just not getting to because the timing and the field vision and the feel of where the eligibles are at and running these plays with a quarterback that's only been here a couple of weeks, like it's not there, right? So things are harder. There's more margin for error as you as a team because you have to construct your way down the field. How do you do that? By running hard and taking hard yards. And sometimes you're going to get the ball, you're going to come out of the mesh point, you say, hey, here's a dirty 2. I can take a dirty 2, or I can bounce outside and try to go get the edge. Take the dirty 2. Please stick your nose in there, put your pads down, run hard, grind it out against good interior defensive linemen like Devon Achane. I don't think he's worth what the Patriots are paying him, but that's another conversation for another day. You have an opportunity to stick your nose down, get dirty, move the pile, fall forward, and turn a 2-yard gain into a 4 or 5-yard gain. And Jaylen Wright did that. And that, in turn, helped facilitate this offense staying enough on schedule, having enough momentum, meaning that those plays started popping for more yards later in the game. It's a mentality, right? And we've gone over it, and again, I'm going to say it again. It's not going to solve all the problems that you have offensively, but the very least that you can do is take what defenses are willing to give you, and then on top of that, if you can start creating extra yards for yourself as the back, that changes the game. I think that's where the tide really turned for how they were willing to call this game offensively. And you saw that. So credit to Jaylen Wright for the way that he ran, because the Dolphins, aside of Jeff Wilson against Jacksonville in week 1, have not had a runner that has run like that all season. And that brings you to the conversation around Devon Achane. I know we've talked about yards over expectation and that statistic and how poorly he's doing in it. But at the same time, like, I'm sorry, you have big 210, 215-pound backs. You got to run those guys, and you got to run them in traffic. And Devon Achane, there's other ways that you can get him the ball. I think you have to be a little bit more selective. I think he's probably going to be one of those players where there's a sweet spot for how many touches you get him to optimize him. And if you do more than that, the efficiency of what he's doing for you is just going to fall off the cliff. And it feels like we found that at the beginning of this season. Now, is there path to redemption? Absolutely. And I expect that they will find ways to get him back on track as a player when he comes back from whatever he's dealing with the concussion protocol. But you got Raheem Mostert back. You've got Jeff Wilson. You got Jaylen Wright. All 3 of those guys are capable of getting dirty yards to varying degrees. And I think they're the guys that, for the indefinite future, and I hope they keep this identity when Tua comes back, I hope that they run that ball with that attitude, because that's what we've been asking for based on what has been available. And now you have backs that can create added yardage on top of it instead of, the line blocked for 3. Well, the line blocked for 3 and the back got you 3. You got a 6-yard run. And you got guys that can do that if you commit to it. And it's not guaranteeing you're going to win games, but it's going to shorten games down. It's going to cut down on possessions. It's going to give you a chance to possess the clock. You can lean on your receivers for explosive plays if you do get set behind the change, like the couple of deep hooks that they ran to Tyreek Hill throughout the game against New England. And you could try to call a game with a script that gives you a chance to win based on the flow of the game. And that's the last thing we're getting into here today on the show. So make sure that you stick with us. If you're trying to get down to catch a Heat game or a Panthers game or a Dolphins game or a Canes game, get your tickets through Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Game Time, I love the fact that they can give you panoramic views from your seats, so there's no guesswork when you put the tickets into your cart. You know exactly what kind of views you're getting at the stadium. I saw a picture from somebody at Foxborough. They bought tickets, and they could only see half the field based on it was like pinned up against the press box. Don't do that to yourself. You could see the panoramic view with Game Time. With all-in pricing, you could see that there's no surprise fees with putting the tickets into your cart as well. It's upfront pricing if you toggle all-in pricing. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. This is the one I feel least confident in, ironically enough, with what changed versus New England. And case in point, only one other time in the Mike McDaniel era of 2 1/4 or 2 1/3 seasons as the team called 40 runs. But we punted on 4th and shorts. We stayed committed in running the football. And the irony is, I didn't think the offensive line, I could tell you the offensive line didn't grade out any differently than what they have most of the season. Liam Eichenberg was bad against New England. He played his worst game of the season comfortably. I think that's a troublesome trend. I thought he was a serviceable player the first 3 weeks. I thought he was not very good in week 4 against Tennessee, and I thought he regressed even more against New England. But you contrast that with Rob Jones played his best game of the season in week 5 against New England. He was playing like a man possessed. I grade him as the second best player the Dolphins had on their offensive line. I thought Teron Armstead played a great game back. I thought Aaron Brewer had hit probably his worst game of the season, but he was sufficient based on the play design. And again, to be clear, I'd like to establish this. I am grading based on what the players are being asked to do within the structure of the play design and the alignment and the leverage and the defense that they're facing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Dolphins shouldn't invest more in the offensive line so they have a bigger menu of things that they can do to attack teams. But when you've committed to this kind of team-building approach, okay, what do you ask the guys to do? Are they doing it or are they not doing it? And now it's up to you as the coach, because this is the ideology that you wanted, to problem solve the rest of it and have the answers. Do you have the answers? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you need to either look down and say, my ideology needs to be fixed. We should invest more in the offensive line, or we should look at the coaching staff and the rest of the offensive personnel and say, what's missing here? Why is this not working? But the offensive line, I thought Austin Jackson was okay. I thought Aaron Brewer was okay. I thought Robert Jones was best game of the season, was solid. I thought Teron Armstead was good, and Liam Eichenberg played his worst game of the season. Like, it's not like, wow, everybody up front played magically better against a good defensive New England defensive front. That's about the grades distribution that you got from this Dolphins offensive line for the first 5 games. It's just who's in what bucket. So that, for me, I guess that element of it is sustainable, because you've got a 5-week sample size of somebody's probably going to play good. Somebody's probably going to play solid. 2 of the guys are probably going to play okay. And then one guy's going to be like, man, you didn't have a good game today. Because that summarizes the first 5 weeks of grades distributions for me and how I grade the Dolphins offensive line for what they're being asked to do perfectly. But it was Mike. We're going to punt. We're going to take field goals. We're not going to leave points on the field. We're going to play the field position game. We're going to run the ball. The light bulb might have gone on without Tua, but when Tua comes back, are we going to revert back to our old ways? Are we going to take some of this with us and use this as a learning lesson and apply it to the identity of this football team this year? I don't know. That's part of the evaluation process that is continuing to be undergone as this season unfolds. We'll see what information they give us next. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Kyle Krabs, and I am out of here. Go Fins. I'll talk to you all again tomorrow.